Two astronauts currently on board the International Space Station may have to stay there until next year. Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams were only meant to be on the ISS for about a week. They boarded the first Boeing Starliner capsule test flight with the crew in June. NASA says it's still evaluating options on how to bring them back safely. A cargo craft delivered much needed supplies on Saturday, carrying about 3 tons of food, fuel, and other necessities for the crew on board. Joining us now to talk about it are two experts from Western University. Sarah Gallagher, director of the Earth and Space Exploration Institute, and Julia McMenamin is a PhD candidate in psychology. Welcome, and thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Sarah, let's start with you, Sarah. Can you shed some light on what went wrong here and what are the options for a safe return home?
Yes. So what happened, this is the first crewed flight to the International Space Station of the Boeing Starliner. So as it was approaching, before it launched, they knew that there was a helium leak. But they thought it was quite minor and wouldn't be a big deal. And then what happened is as the spacecraft was docking on the International Space Station, they realized there were more leaks. And so this is really concerning because, of course, you want to make sure that the astronauts are safe and are able to return home safely. So it's a problem that NASA wants to understand before they send the astronauts back in that spacecraft.
Yeah, and now they've been on it for about 3 months. So Sarah, what is the space-Earth time difference here? Because that's probably feeling like a lot longer. Am I correct when I say that?
Well, it's the time on the International Space Station is actually the same as the time on Earth, but you have to, of course, pick a time zone because it's going around the Earth every 90 minutes. And so the time zone of the International Space Station is Greenwich Mean Time. We also call it Universal Time. And so the time difference is just the normal between what their families experience. It's as if they're in England, basically.
Okay, well, what might be making it feel a lot longer is that they're contained in a small space together unexpectedly for such a long period of time. Which brings me to Julia. These astronauts went from thinking they were going to spend 8 days together, now looking at possibly spending about 7 months together in a small space. That can't be easy. You did a similar study on a similar situation.
Yeah, so I've done a few studies with participants in analog space missions, and these are where conditions of human or robotic exploration of space are simulated here on Earth in order to help prepare for both human and technological demands of future space exploration missions. And a common element I see across analog missions and actual space exploration missions is that selecting crew members who thrive in teamwork environments, who can deal with the stress of being in those confined spaces, who can adapt to unpredictable situations like this one that they're facing right now, and then providing them with all the training and support they need to enhance those qualities is really key to mission success and to the well-being of the crew. Because no matter how much planning and preparation is done, things can and do go wrong, and it's how people react and adapt that really matters. So I'm really confident that these two astronauts and the others they joined on the International Space Station have all the qualities and training and support that they need to adapt to that situation, even though I'm sure it is a really difficult thing for themselves and their families to be dealing with right now.
What's the advice there if they are spending this time in this unprecedented situation, small confined space with a coworker, essentially?
I think it's important in any situation like that, whether it's in space or on Earth, to find your ways of coping that work for you as an individual and really stick to those and really make sure that you're making time and space for those things. So some people have individual things that they do by themselves. Maybe they need some time alone. As hard as that sounds, there are ways to get alone, at least for some segment of the day, and focus on something else that helps sort of ground them and recharge them and help them get through this.
Okay. I want to look a bit into the future. Sarah, what's the difference between getting to and staying in low Earth orbit, where the ISS is, and a mission to the moon like the upcoming Artemis 2 mission scheduled for September of next year?
So it takes a few hours to get to low Earth orbit. So low Earth orbit is about 400 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. So it takes a few hours to get there, and then it takes a few hours to get back. In contrast, the moon is much, much farther away. So it takes about 3 days to get to the moon and about 3 days to get back.
Okay, and then Julia, on that note, how might those distances affect the situation for the astronauts?
Yeah, so when we talk about things like the duration of a mission or the conditions or the sort of isolation and separation from Earth, all of those things really are sort of compounded when you're looking at longer term duration missions and just being further away. So things like that time delay with communication back with Earth, or even just complete blackouts on times where you can't communicate with folks back on Earth. Those are all things that are going to be a lot more challenging for people to deal with the sort of longer and further away we go in space. And these are the kind of things that the major space exploration organizations are preparing for right now. So finding ways to adapt to those situations where they can't have this sort of closer to real time communication is something that they're working on.
Wow, very interesting. Okay, well, for those of you watching, a final decision on the timeline for the astronauts returning home will be made in the coming week. Sarah and Julia, thank you so much for joining us today. That's Sarah Gallagher and Julia McMenamin from Western University.
Thank you.